Hello, hello, hello. I believe I'm live again. And welcome to Sincerely Agile with Mary. If you can see me and hear me, can you please make a comment if you can see me and hear me? Yes, I am live. If you can see me and hear me, fantastic, fantastic. And I can see Obi James is here as well. So hello, everyone. Where are you, dialing in from? If you can just make a reaction, make a comment, where you dialing in from, fantastic. I see you, Grace. I see Pastor Jonathan. That's fantastic. Welcome, everybody. Okay, thank you. I see Kemi from Lagos again today. That's fantastic. I see Victoria. Thank you very much again for spending your time with us this evening on Sincerely Agile with Mary. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, as always, this is a program where we promote the lean agile mindset. It is a platform where we want to learn, unlearn, and relearn, because when we know more, we do more essentially. It is a platform for a call to action so that we can be awesome and wholesome together. So already with me is Obi James, and I'm going to bring her in now. And I have you on screen, Obi. Hello.
Hello. Hi, Mary. How are you?
How are you doing?
Not bad at all for a Sunday afternoon or evening almost.
Absolutely. Nice to have you here. Thank you so much for investing your time with me on Sincerely Agile with Mary. It's great
Thank
to
you
have you
very
here.
much. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited to be with you today.
I'm excited to have you.
Thank you.
Now, let me tell you about Obi James. Obi James is a Nigerian Finnish executive coach with over 15 years experience of successfully developing people, leaders, and teams across large multinational organizations, including the UNHCR, National Grid, NHS, Morgan Stanley, London Business School, Farfetch, Bloomberg, and the Greater London Authority. Her organizational development methods focus on developing high-performing teams and groups by inspiring shared leadership and transforming their relationships. A former vice president in HR and trained mediator, she is also a certified organizational and relationship systems coach, and of course, team performance coach. Her big dream is to play an active role in Africa's journey to maximizing its vast talent and resources. In 2019, she joined the board of trustees for Royal African Society and continues to facilitate its mission of amplifying African voices and interests globally. She also develops leaders and teams across African countries, including Nigeria, where she grew up. Obi, you're welcome to the program. How are you doing this evening?
What an introduction. Thank you very much. I'm really
What
excited
an,
to
what
be
an
here.
achievement. What an achievement. What
Thank
an
you.
achievement. Great. So, Obi, tell us, you are a workplace relationship and inclusive leadership expert. For me, that already sounds like a skill we really need in our organizations, especially at a time like this. So,
Yes.
tell us, with COVID, business continuity seems a walk in the park almost for some organizations. And they are not just surviving, but they are thriving. So, what are they doing that's making them not just survive at a time like this, but actually thriving?
Yeah, very good question. It's been tough for a lot of organizations. Obviously, it's a time where leadership has been very challenged, teams have been very challenged. I think we are finally getting to a stage where we would almost say we've been on this journey for a year in terms of the disruption to organizations, and the changes and the getting used to for some teams working with ambiguity. I would say that I've worked with, I can't actually count how many teams I've worked with in the last year. So it's been a busy year. Certainly 2020 was a busy year. And I would say that one of the things that I've found to be very different between the teams that have really just stepped up and taken on the challenge, and those who really found it tough, has actually been the relationships with the teams. Within the team members and in the teams themselves. What I have found is some of the teams that we're working with at the moment, who are still at the very early stages of looking at the team dynamics and how they're working together, they're coming to us with a lot more conflict than teams that have thrived. And a lot of the teams that have thrived are those ones that actually paid attention at the very start to the possible impact or the potential impact of the crisis, not just on their organization but on the teams, and started having those conversations around, what does this mean for our team? What would this change mean for our team? And how do we want to be with one another? So the ones that have done really well have actually almost gone back to the drawing board and started the rebuilding from scratch of their teams, to think about, who are we as a team now that a lot of us are having to engage virtually? Who are we as a team now that resources are all over the place, and people are losing colleagues, people are having challenges at home, which obviously was impacting and still is impacting the way they can show up at work. So I think the teams that had those relationships or paid attention to those relationships and started designing how to work together have actually come out, this year feeling much more prepared for what's to come. And the teams that got carried away, unfortunately, by all the pressures and, couldn't stop, and which, is understandable because there was so much to be done, to pause and think about, actually, how do we want to do this, have just dispersed in a lot of ways. So it hasn't just been the disconnection because we're not in the same physical spaces anymore, but there has been disconnection in terms of the connections and the relationships between team members, and that's had an impact on how creative and innovative they've been able to be to get them through these times.
I like that response. What I take from what you're saying in summary is that when COVID hit, some teams just essentially just continued.
Mm.
They didn't take a step back to say, hey, this is a huge change.
Yeah.
This is a big change. How do we want to be going forward? What does this mean for us as a team? And that is usually coming from the pressure, right? Oh, we have to deliver.
Yeah. And a lot of organizations had that. So a lot of organizations, we all had to get into crisis management mode. Like everyone had to. I had to do that with my team members. My clients had to do that within their teams. And I think the key thing was knowing when you could pause. So at the very early stages, we just needed leaders to step up. We didn't have time to kind of look at, how do we do this together? People just needed to make some quick decisions and get on with it. And of course, leaders were then required to step up. But there came a time when they then had to pause. And actually, this is where it's hard to separate the leadership from the team, because the leaders who've been able to step back and think about themselves in terms of how they're leading through this journey, how much they're involving their people on the journey, have been able to bring their team along when they needed to bring their teams along. Some leaders have just carried on in that way, and essentially what they ended up doing was creating a level of dependency from their teams, which has meant that a lot of leaders are really burnt out. And hopefully, I think there are lessons learned, and we're getting leaders to step back now and think about how could they do things differently in 2021.
Absolutely. And another thing I'm picking from what you're saying is that there's a high chance also that teams that actually took that moment to stop are probably teams who were already doing, who already had that kind of nature or culture, if you like, who had that continuous improvement mindset to say, you know what, from time to time, we need to stop, inspect, adapt, and see how well we're doing or not doing, what we need to change or not change. So if you already have that culture in even when you don't have a crisis. I would imagine that when you have a huge crisis, you're really stopping,
Yeah,
right? You're
absolutely.
really, really stopping to say, okay, what next?
And there are teams who were high performing before the crisis that have completely dismantled and have just lost their way in terms of how they work together. So I think regardless of which stage of development a team is at,
Mhm.
it was such a crucial time, and it remains a crucial time for teams to just pause and think about, just because I was high performing in 2020 doesn't mean I'll carry on being high performing in 2021. And of course, the structures of teams are changing, so the makeup of teams are changing. People are leaving, people are coming in, the dynamics are changing. The teams are different, and they're constantly evolving. So there has been a need to carry on that journey, and not all the high performing ones have done that.
Yeah, interesting. You say that some teams were high performing, and because of the COVID situation, are you then relating the low productivity or performance to remote working?
There has been an impact. There's certainly been an impact. I think one of the things I've seen with teams, and in fact, I've just worked with a number of teams in the last week alone. I think I had about 3 teams last week. And one of the things that is coming up a lot in these teams is that there's so much that has been made up. So because people aren't having those connections, because we're not having those water cooler conversations, because we're not grabbing a coffee or grabbing lunch or whatever it might look like, those conversations are such crucial parts of the connections in a team, and that's been taken away by virtual working for a lot of teams. So what I'm finding with some of the teams that I'm working with at the moment is that that virtual working has to impact every team, and every team needs to design around that. So people have made up things about, if I was in a team with you, Mary, I might make up that the reason that you're being a little bit silent on this call is because there's some friction or something's going on, and I just make it up, and I might make a decision based on that assumption. And because we're not together often enough, I carry that and I make decisions based on that assumption that might be incorrect. So we don't have those chit chats where I can just check in with you and say, hey, you look a bit down today, or how are you doing today? All that's been taken away. So the virtual working certainly has had an impact on all teams, I would say.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it has had, do you think, both positive and negative impact? That's number one. Number two, I mean, you talked about those cooler conversations, those informal conversations, those, 2 minutes by the stairwell, by the lift, it's amazing the little things we take for granted, right?
Yeah.
And when you're working remotely, when we're working online, like you said, the body language is difficult to read, very difficult to read. But one thing I have seen, though, I have seen a lot of new ways of trying to communicate. For example, asking people to always have their video on as much as
Mhm.
possible, make it as real life as possible, and stuff like that. So, in terms of remote working, there has been positives and negatives. What highlights can you give us in terms of the positives and the negatives?
I would say the first thing I thought about, you talked about, we're both Nigerian, obviously. We've both had experience of living in Nigeria. And I think one of the positives that comes to mind is how much more connected we are, because those geographical boundaries have been broken. So I'm working a lot more with countries in Africa, which, was, I think that people and teams and organizations are taking more risks, or they're opening up to new ways of doing things more than before. So whereas we had all the challenges around, you need to book your flights and accommodation and all that stuff, I can just get on the call and have someone from Kenya, someone's from South Africa, I've got someone from Nigeria, and we can still have those sessions. And so it's opened up in terms of access to development opportunities, but for us also access to our own growth and understanding of what's working across other continents.
Absolutely. And I totally agree with you. The geographical barriers are totally gone. I mean, I have been doing online training for 4 years. Pre-COVID, I've been, working
Yeah,
online. But now we are all just online, and it is amazing. And like you said, it's, remote working full force, so to speak.
yeah,
Remote working full
absolutely.
force. Now, going forward,
Mm.
What do you think the future might look like? Do you think more people will opt for, say, 50-50? I'll work 50%, at home, if things sort of go back to some kind of, normality, if you like? What do you think might happen? What might the new normal be?
I think it'll be a mix. I think one of the things that um, organizations are realizing is how important it is to be open to flexible working. And I think that companies and businesses that were previously very averse to the idea of people working from home, um, organizations where the challenges weren't really about whether or not technology could support working from home. The challenges were about how much do you trust your team members and how much do you trust your people that they will carry on delivering without having to do that FaceTime. I think that things are changing and that mindset is shifting. So and I feel very excited about it. I certainly, again, as a business, I have to pivot, change a lot of things about how we work and how we communicate and engage with our clients and make sure that we're constantly with them, even though we're not. I think businesses have had to do the same things, and in doing that, people have opened up to change in a different way and embraced difference and diverse ways of working. So I see a lot of organizations that are now very clear on what are the critical roles that need to be here physically. What are the roles that can be done from home? And actually, in doing that, what they've done is opened up to more talent. So if you see, mums who are mat leave that might previously not be considering going back to work are actually changing their minds and thinking, well, actually, maybe I can juggle this. Maybe, I'm a parent. It's easy for me to say to a client, look, my 8-year-old needs me to help her log into her Zoom class, and that's just what it is. And so we're now in a lot more transparent and open and human in a lot of ways. So that excites me. I think that it also creates a lot of opportunities, and I think that it means that organizations will be able to maximize their resources and attract more suitable talent that maybe they could in the past. So I think it'll be a mix, and I think more and more companies would lean towards being more flexible in terms of working patterns.
Fantastic. I like the fact that you said it wasn't a question of infrastructure. It was always there.
It was always
It was
there.
always there. It was a
Mhm.
problem. It was a mindset problem.
Yeah,
It was a case of you needed to clock in and clock out, so to
yeah,
speak.
yeah.
And another thing I'm excited about is it's now more, there's much more focus on humanity.
Mm.
Okay, there's much more focus on that woman who has, one or two children at home. We are spending less time commuting. There's less waste. That is the way I say it.
Yeah, yeah,
We have, yeah, and that because there's less waste, we are saving more,
yeah,
and there's more productivity for a lot of people.
yeah, yeah.
Because the time you would otherwise use in traffic or commuting, you just come downstairs, plug your system, and you're good to go. So I am really excited about that as well. So I just want to check the comments to see if we have any questions so far. Um, let's see, any questions for us? Not yet. Okay. Hello, Obi is awesome. Someone says you're awesome. That's great.
Oh,
Yes,
thank you.
yes, she is awesome. Now, I have a question for the audience. Now, here's my question for you. What challenges have you encountered with remote working? If you're watching right now and you have had any challenges, do you want to share that with us? What challenges have you encountered with remote working? It could be childcare, it could be connectivity, it could be anything. Let's hear what your challenges are. So I'm just going to look at the comments now to see. Okay, someone is saying virtual work has broken down geographical boundaries. Absolutely. And companies are opening up to other ways of doing things. Yes. Okay, that was just echoing what you said. Any comments at all? Any stories you want to share with us? Just very briefly, what challenges are you having um, working remotely? Is it a positive for you? Or is it a negative? Because for some people, it's not necessarily a great thing to work from home, right? Can you speak to that,
Yeah,
Obi?
I think it's been an interesting year. I mean, it's not just COVID, right? We've had Black Lives Matter movement that got kicked off, which has obviously gotten lots of organizations to well, some organizations to look at themselves and do some of that reflection work around what they need to do to become anti-racist and what that
Okay.
would mean for them as organizations. And I think one of the things that has come from all the changes last year is that I think people have been given permission to speak up. And so if I think of my clients, and I'll talk about the diversity work from the Black Lives Matter movement, I think what I find is that there's been a need for more transparency about actually what does it mean to be a Black person within this organization? What does it mean to be marginalized in your teams? And there are different conversations that have been able to take place because of virtual working. There's sometimes it's your computer can be a little bit of a security blanket, right? I can rehearse things, I can show up differently, I can turn off my video if I get upset, which happened to me, sometime last year. I got upset on a call because someone said something completely ridiculous that just really like kicked one of my values, and I found myself tearing up, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to ask for permission. I'm just going to turn off my camera and, pull myself together because I want to come back with a skillful response. Now, if I was in a team situation, if I was, I would feel the spotlight on me, and I would feel so there are different ways that I think that virtual working has helped open up conversations that we've not been able to have in the past. And on the flip side, I think that some of the things that have come up has been a lot of conflict that gets brushed under the carpet. I think, people, as I've said before, people are making up stuff about what's happening for team members. I think that we don't feel so much about what's going on for colleagues, even in team meetings. I remember very early on last year being on a call with a team, one of my teams, not a client, and someone just seemed off. And because I read rooms, that's what I do for a living. I was able to pick up the phone and check that something's going on, and she completely broke down. And I think that that's lost to an extent because there are some of those impromptu conversations that we have because the moment brings it on, and when you're on Zoom and everyone's on screen, you don't have the same level of connection. So it's like everything else, it's pros and cons, right?
Pros and cons, absolutely. And I have a comment here. Learning from more experienced colleagues was easier when we were working in the same, co-located space.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was much easier because you could just walk up to a friend, walk up to a colleague to say, actually, can you help me with that? And you could also read the body language as well.
Yes, yes, and I think it's also that what happens in open plan offices, right? So when I was at Morgan Stanley, I remember, I can't remember which way. I think I went from being in an open plan office to going into an office, and you get lost. And this feels a little bit like it. If you go into your office and you're one of those people that shuts your doors, and you can just get consumed by what's going on. And there are nuggets of information that fly around all the time. You hear how someone's addressing a question a colleague might have asked, and you learn from that, and all that's lost, right? So yeah, it's not easy. I don't think it's easy for anyone. And the other thing I would say is that we just need so much more compassion. I think that so many people are struggling. I use my kids, homeschooling as an example, and I talk to them about the privileges that we have, that you can have a laptop and you can have a laptop and you can do that work, and you have a mother that has the privilege of saying, okay, I'm going to delay this meeting because I can help you do this. Not everyone has that. So I also think that there is the divide can also be quite larger, and I think that's happening in workplaces. So for a lot of people, if your home conditions aren't right, if you're not happy at home, if you have relationship problems at home, or you have carer responsibilities, or now you're being expected to carry that, and homeschooling, you're having to carry that and then do work at the same time. And I think sometimes we forget. I think sometimes people get on these Zoom calls, and again, you make up that, oh, that person is late with this report, or and actually it does help to just put those judgments aside and check in and see how people are doing and where they might need some support that is different from what they've needed in the past.
Absolutely, absolutely. We need to be much more sensitive and
Yeah.
compassionate. And I was just thinking, and I saw a question, or is it a comment? Now, if you were already a team, okay, before COVID, and you then needed to continue, fine. Maybe you took time out to say, how do we want to continue? Maybe you didn't. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, if you're starting a new team, an entirely new team, and you have to kick all of this off remotely, now, how easy is that going to be? Now, let me read what Joy is saying here. Joy is saying, can working from home affect building a working relationship among co-workers slash team members? So you've got two questions here. The
Yeah,
first
one
one,
is a new team, and then
yeah,
okay. And what was the second one? So the first one is the new team, like a team that's completely starting, and the second one was affecting the relationships.
yes,
Okay. So I think with a new team, I've had some new teams actually that have started, that I started working with right from the forming stage, and I would say that for a new team, they need a different type of support, and then support development, help, or whatever you want to call it, because I think that some of the teams that I see where you've got new team members, there's that thing about getting to know one another, right? There's that thing about when we first met, right, I asked you questions about your family. I always very nosy anyway, but you find out the person, and then you build a connection with that person, and it's those connections that make you imagine what you could do together, right? If we didn't have those conversations, I wouldn't have said, oh, we might collaborate, maybe we can work with some of our Nigerian clients, whatever that might look like.
yeah,
But there's a connection there that sometimes what happens with teams, especially when they're new, is that they get into work straight away. So I met a team 6 months ago. I started working with a team 6 months ago, about 6 months ago, and they just formed. And they had formed, I think I met them about 3 months after they'd formed. And they were working together as individuals, a collection of individuals, but they were not a team. And it wasn't until I said, okay, let's just, first of all, I'm not going to let you induct me into your fast pace, because I have to be different. And actually, if you're having the same conversations that you usually have, then I'm not doing my job. So I basically had to slow this team right down and actually consciously and intentionally get them to start thinking about, who are these people? What are some of your life experiences that have informed who you've become, and actually have given you skills that we might find valuable in this team? So those initial conversations, we now have to be very conscious and intentional about them so that we can get the connections built. So what tends to happen is, this is your job title, you meet this person, here's a list of people, speak to them, and actually no one takes the time to find out, who is this person? You're a human that is full of all this amazing diversity, whatever your makeup might be, wherever you come from, whatever your life experiences are, you bring such rich history. And I think sometimes new teams forget that anyway, let alone when there's virtual working. So if you've not met at all, have you actually become connected enough to be able to dream of being a team, let alone becoming a team? So I think with new teams, that's really been a lot of the emphasis for the work that we've done, is actually we need to get work done. And at the same time, if we can make you a team, if we can move you from being a collection of individuals to becoming a team, then 1 + 1 is equal to 3, because there's so much more you can do. So that's my response to the new team. So it's a different type of challenge, but there are challenges there that can be overcome like every other challenge.
So what I take from that is that because we're actually kicking off a team remotely, we are conscious of the fact that we have our forming and norming stages, which we
Yeah,
would have normally.
of
So
course.
this will be amplified in a remote situation if we don't pay particular attention to it.
Absolutely.
Essentially. So we need to be
Absolutely.
much more intentional about that relationship, about that initial connection in the forming stages. That's what I'm taking from that. Otherwise, it leads to waste.
Yeah, It's and actually it's very quick. You very quickly get into making up what someone's about, and then you lose all the this it's I always say to people, when you interview people and you get really excited and you say, oh my gosh, Obi, we want you to join us, you've got all this experience, you've got this diversity, da, da, da. And then you just bring me and say, this is how we do things around here, and I just join how you do things around. So what's the point of all that? So I think there's something there about how do you really unleash that? How do you bring that newness and fresh eyes and look at your processes, all the stuff you guys do in the agile world? How do you kind of become more agile as a result of this additional person that comes in that brings in lots of different ways of working?
Yeah, otherwise, like you said, you've brought in all this talent that you're not leveraging, which is just a waste.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's so important that they're intentional about it and that they can leverage all that possibilities. I have here.
And I think you had a second question, didn't you, about the relationship?
Yes, the second question. Let me just read that up for you. Can working from home affect building a working relationship among co-workers or team members? So this is an existing team now. This is an existing team.
Of course it can. The person that you're working with in an office on a day-to-day basis is not necessarily the person that shows up when they're working from home. You've got, like, I've got my kids saying, oh, where's breakfast? Or, Adora's kicked me, whatever it might be. Like there are distractions that are not normal in the workspace that we suddenly have all around us. Our cat comes up sometimes, and those are just flimsy examples, but there's some big things that people are having to do. There's the doorbell goes and I have to get a delivery. There's so it does affect the working, the way people show up at work, and it does affect the relationships. And I think, again, working from home, it's a little bit like, a good example would be when we think about schools. So I'm a governor in my children's school, and we think about kids wear uniforms in the UK. So we all, there's a baseline. We're all the same. We come in, we've got this to an extent in the workplace. When you're at home, the stuff that you have to deal with varies. So if I'm at home and I'm going to use Nigeria. Let's say I've got a driver. Of course, you don't have that in London. Well, most people don't. But let's say in Nigeria, I've got my driver, I've got this, I've got all these resources around me that mean that I'm able to focus on my work, right? I will show up differently. I might be more tolerant as well. I might be more able to check in on colleagues. I might be more able to share what's going on for me. If I'm running around and I'm just torn in all different directions and I'm trying to do 250 things, I'm not going to engage with my colleagues the same way I used to when I was at work, right? So of course it affects how people individually show up. And if the relationships aren't strong enough that team members are able to recognize that this person might be a little bit different, have you checked in on there? Or the Black community here is a lot more affected by COVID, as a lot of us know. I know a lot of people affected by, people have died, people that are ill. It affects how I show up at work. I can show up in a session and be really not in a place that I could be creative. So can I share that? Have I got allies that I can confide in? Not the same way. So I think that there's a disparity in terms of where people are. That impacts how they show up, which then impacts the relationships. My hope is that where there are strong enough relationships, people are more compassionate, like we've talked about, and are able to cut their colleagues, some slack when they're not showing up how they usually show up.
Absolutely. So we just need to be, like you said before, much more sensitive, much more compassionate, and checking on one another.
Yeah.
Checking on one another. Okay. Now, talking about systems, any system gets better through feedback. So this means, like we said before, we need to deliberately stop and invest time in getting better. This, however, is the very thing we tend to feel we don't have time to do. Why is that? Why is this a common pattern in, and what is the impact?
Gosh, there's so many places we could go with that question. So I think if I look at it from a leadership perspective, I work a lot with senior leadership teams because the methodology that we use, we have a share leadership methodology, and we focus on seeking feedback, having accountability, adapting, reconnecting after you've adapted, and then empowering your people. And feedback is the first part of our methodology for a reason, because particularly when it comes to leaders, they are the most starved of constructive feedback. There's feedback like, oh, we love you, you're a manager, you're doing a great job, and and culturally it's also different here than it is in, I say, Nigeria, because obviously I'm closer, I have a connection with Nigeria, but in most countries it's different. But that whole hierarchy means that leaders don't get enough feedback that challenges them in a way that is constructive. So because of that, a lot of leaders walk around with very limited awareness.
Yeah.
And they think, and it's not I don't see it as a negative thing for the leader. I see it as unfortunate, because I can go around thinking I'm doing a great job, and actually I'm not, but my intention's right, but the impact on people is not what I'm hoping it is, right? So you're not getting the feedback. And I think that the most common impact now with COVID is that lots of leaders who don't already have that feedback culture, or teams that don't already have that feedback culture, are going around making decisions, making poor decisions, and not being challenged on those decisions. And they're having to roll out new things every week, because not because the things the team members didn't know that what they were rolling out wasn't going to work. It's just because no one's telling them. So I think feedback is the impact is huge now with virtual work, and again for the same reasons that people are very disconnected, and it's something that people, as you said, it takes the back seat when you're really busy. People aren't getting the feedback. Leaders are struggling. I do quite a bit of executive coaching work, and actually what we need, again, I keep saying it, compassion. And on the other side of it, we need leaders to be more vulnerable. Like, this is not the time to think that you can I don't know, you can save everyone. You can't rescue everyone. You can't have all the answers. And actually, if you think you do, you're probably getting something wrong. So I think feedback is just, if you can get one thing right, just do it. I'd say feedback, if you can just bring in a feedback culture, you'll be good.
Yeah. Yeah. So that we can, continuously inspect and adapt, of course, be it with to do with our interactions, our processes, or whatever it is we need feedback on. So that is so important. Feedback is what really makes our system get better. So what is the one thing that if teams learned to do well would build cohesion? Because like you said, we don't just want a group of people, we want a team.
I guess building on from the feedback is transparency. I think, I get so many people asking me, leaders, team members, tell me what to do. How am I supposed to do? I'm not in your team. Go ask them. Like, if we could just have more people being vulnerable and being transparent and being able to say, I actually don't know. I don't know how to be with this team right now. What, help me. What's needed here? What do you want from me, and how can you help me get what I want, so that we can all kind of get what we want? If we can just bring more transparency in, that solves everything, because that's why a team member is able to say, do you know what, my sister is ill, or my child is ill, or my child is really behind with homeschooling. I need to miss this meeting. If we can have that level of transparency and safety and cohesion in our team, I think the world would be a much better place altogether, not just in the workplace.
And I thoroughly love that answer, because it then just brings up the first agile value of individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And again, talking about being human centered, that first value just keeps coming up. It just keeps coming up. And what I see also is that it really doesn't matter what the challenges are. If there's radical candor, if there's psychological safety, if we can have those difficult conversations, we can overcome almost anything together as a team, because
Absolutely.
we are a team. We are not just a group of people. We are a team with a shared understanding working towards a common goal. Fantastic answer. Let's see if there are any more questions or comments. We really want to engage with our audience. Learning, okay, with more experience. Bamidele says transparency, transparency. Okay, let me just, okay, there you go. I can
Oh, I
actually
love
show the
that.
comments. Okay, Bamidele Oluwatobi says transparency, transparency, that's the building block for trust. And without trust, no productivity. Absolutely. And I have this one here too from the same person. Except you are intentional about it, most virtual work environments focus more on the work than the relationship. Absolutely. And that is why I brought up the agile value, the first value, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And I know also that a lot of organizations, even pre-COVID, were already thinking about being much more human centered. You need to, take care of your people. If your people, your employees are doing good, ultimately your customers will be, they will be satisfied, they will be happy. So that's a fantastic comment there. And Grace says, well done, Mary and Obi. Bisola Dino says, great job. I mean, they're all saying great job to you, especially you're my
Both
guest.
of us.
And a few thumbs up from Wakanda Agility there. Thank you very much for being here.
Felt like
And
doing the Wakanda sign when you showed that.
and I've got an applause there from Agatha. Okay, so back to my banners. Now, what is a typical day like for you, Obi? What's a typical day like for you?
A work day or just the whole day?
A work day. A work
Okay,
day. Now,
okay.
if we're talking
Well,
about COVID times now, I guess you can say that is work and
it's
home.
completely blurred. So I'll just pick a date. I'll pick Friday because it's the last work day I've had. So a typical day, I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I try to, or 5 or 6. I try to go for a run in the morning. I try. I don't always get it right. Then kids, get kids set up. I've got 2 girls. They have their different work things they have to do for school, and usually they have to log into work at 9, which is why I bring it in. So usually I'm trying to finalize the getting them on their things and set up for classes, and then I've got my clients for the day. So what did I do I think on Friday I completed a 9-month team engagement program. So it was a nice actually wrap up to the week, because I had a half a day workshop with a team I've been meeting with every 6 weeks since the start of COVID. So actually going back to whether you're meeting virtually or, I've never met these people, but it's hard to believe I don't know them because I've worked with them all through COVID times. So I had a half-day completion session with them and celebrated the successes, and I think they had about 61% increase in constructive interaction. So we were celebrating the fact that they're now able to do conflict without the fear of damaging their relationships, because they've learned how to do it in a healthy way. And then I had an executive coaching client, and then I had a 3-way meeting, which was an executive coaching client that was starting up. So I had to meet with them and the sponsor to design the coaching engagement. So I had an existing individual client, I had a new exec coaching client, and then I was wrapping up a team. So that was my Friday, and by the end of it, I was done.
Okay. So would you say you're busier in COVID times with, organizations reaching out to you for the kind of problems they're having now?
I would say 2020 has been the busiest year of my life, essentially. So I do a lot of work with the NHS. So I do a lot of work with teams within the NHS in primary care. So when COVID hit in March, I think I dropped everything to essentially help different practices, NHS practices, to make sure that they could engage with their patients virtually and carry on with the patient care, and of course the staff working environments. So that was the start of my year, and then I was just getting to a stage where I felt that we could breathe again. Then there was the murder of George Floyd. So obviously a huge thing here in the UK, in the US, across the world. So I started doing quite a bit of work. I work with some organizations around becoming anti-racist, so coaching their leadership teams and their management teams, but also coaching some of the DEI councils. And so it's been the best year from a work perspective in terms of fulfillment. I've absolutely loved 2020 in terms of the difference I've been able to make with my work, but also the work that my teams have been able to do has just been mind-blowingly rewarding. But yeah, 2020 has to be a bit more balanced. So I'm hoping we have a slightly more balanced 2021.
Fantastic, fantastic. Because obviously, like we said before, if we're not leveraging all these capabilities, then it is just simply waste. So if organizations are reaching out to you, and if you're busy, then obviously they are really trying to leverage their, all their capabilities and remain productive. So that's a good thing. So you have heard it all. Obi is an expert. She's great at building relationships. If you need help with your teams, connect with Obi James on LinkedIn and get the conversation started. Can we have her LinkedIn profile, please, posted? I believe, Mayowa, you have it. If you have a LinkedIn profile,
It's
please.
Obi James UK. So
It's
I think
Obi
I'm
James,
Obi
and
James
you see what
UK
she
across
looks
all the
like
platforms.
anyway.
Yeah. So I would love
Absolutely.
to connect, and thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely. 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 So it's absolutely been an awesome day. So anyway, I do have a takeaway for you. I have a takeaway for you. So for the audience, and the takeaway is step forward in spite of fear.
I love that.
These are very difficult times, and people have even lost their jobs. The chances are you're probably thinking of something else to do. Now, my takeaway for you today is step forward in spite of fear. Courage is not the absence of fear, but it is actually stepping forward, doing what you have to do in spite of fear. You probably have that, big plan that you've been thinking of, okay? That big plan, and you've been procrastinating. Make a commitment to revisit that plan. And all you have to do is break it into small, actionable activities of value. Small, actionable activities of value that you can actually celebrate, that adds value and that makes you energized. When you achieve something, you feel energized. So you want to do that. And once you are doing that, you're iterating. You're inspecting, you're learning, you're adapting. All of this has come up in our conversation. There are difficult times, but a lot of things can still be done. We can be high performing at a time like this. We can leverage our own personal agility to ask ourselves, what can we do for ourselves? I started this last week. Some of you were here last week. It wasn't without fear, but here we are with our second episode. So I really want to encourage you to do that. And of course, if you're looking to move into the agile space, I have a training coming up in January 23rd. Get in touch via Facebook page, YouTube, LinkedIn, DM, and let's get the conversation going. Also, I have someone coming next Sunday, Omozua, another premium consultant, joining us next week. And the topic, as you can see, are you the CEO of your brain? And let me show you what Omozua looks like. There she is. She's going to be joining us next Sunday, talking about the brain. Now, the brain, without the brain, I don't think we exist, right? So, but the question is, are you the CEO of your brain? So that is the topic for next week. I think I have a few more comments. Let's just see what they have to say. Okay, do not forget to make it through difficult times. Let's see. Okay, thank you very much for putting that there, Mayowa. Interesting chat. Someone said, you stepped up. Okay, someone said you stepped up again and again. Okay, thank you very much. So yes, that's our takeaway for you today. And if you are in a team, you are struggling, as you can see, Obi James is an expert when it comes to relationship building and team building and just making sure, that teams can be high performing. Because at the end of the day, if you have teams that can really be high performance, not just a group of people, then they can almost do anything together. So Obi James, thank you so much for the time you have invested here with me today. We will be back again next Sunday with another high premium guest. Let's see. I think I need to bring that up. Someone is saying something. Yes, this is the time to step forward. Yes, that is good. I like that. Absolutely. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our page, tell your friends and families about it. Most importantly, tell your graduating youths about this channel, because there's so much more to come. And what is happening today is that a lot of our graduates are not work ready. They are not work ready. We're going to be engaging in conversations on this platform that will make them start to think of what else to do or what other capabilities that they need to leverage. So spread the good news, and we will be here again next Sunday. And I see Mary. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you, Joy. Um, yes, this is the time to step forward. Yes, I think I already showed that. So, Obi James, thank you so much for being here today. And to our audience that have invested their time today, I
That was
do not take
great.
it for granted, because your time is the most precious gift you can give anybody. So thank you once again, and hopefully we'll see you next Sunday.
Thank you
OBJ.
very much. Take care, Mary, and I look forward to doing some more work with you. Take care,
Same
everyone.
here.
Take care of yourselves.
Bye-bye.
Bye.